Welcome, everybody. Today we have our Rachel Bauman on the call. She is TRG's Underwriting and Claims Manager. And today we really wanted to discuss a recent influx in debit vouchers that we've seen issued by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So we have Rachel on the call because she kind of is our frontline defense of seeing those come in, but also to give us some insight as to why. Now, before we jump into the why, I guess, Rachel, kind of the first topic to cover is what even is a debit voucher?
Yeah, so a debit voucher is issued by customs whenever a payment made to them is considered dishonored. That's the language they use. Realistically, that means for one reason or another, they can't access the funds. Typically, we see this when the banking details are incorrect. If you've recently changed your bank information and didn't get that updated correctly with customs, or if the account is insufficient. Um, and we have recently been seeing an influx of that happening because the financial institution is seeing these payments as either fraudulent or they're crossing withdrawal thresholds that are set by the bank, where these payments that are coming out are much higher than those thresholds allow for.
Okay, yeah. So let's kind of walk through an example of how that
Mhm.
happens. So, kind of like the first step of how importers submit payment to
Mhm.
customs.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So typically, most of the time, these are duty payments owed to customs. And importers oftentimes have ACH payments established with customs, meaning that when the entry is made, that duty payment is scheduled to automatically come out of their own bank account. And so what we've been seeing recently is that with the tariffs, these payments are much higher than they used to be. And that's what's causing issues with the financial institutions.
Mhm. So is this just because they're bigger payments? I know you mentioned something about like a withdrawal limit.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of one of two issues, maybe compounding issues.
Mhm.
There are limits to how much the bank will allow to come out. And most of the time, importers probably haven't even had to think about what those limits are. And now
Yeah.
with these tariff payments being so much higher than they have been, the banks are just automatically rejecting those payments coming out. Additionally, because the banks haven't seen those high payments coming out of those importers' accounts, they're seeing it as fraud. And so they'll flag it and the importer has to authorize the payment. And sometimes they don't see that right away and then the payment doesn't go through.
Okay, yeah. So basically, if the importer then did approve it, maybe this would
hmm
be, you know,
hmm
avoided.
hmm
But if they don't see it, especially because, importers are not maybe used to seeing this because it's usually not an
Right.
issue,
hmm
then it's getting flagged and then a debit voucher is being issued.
Yeah.
Um, Now, so just going back, I know I'm kind of making you talk about a lot of like basics. So for the
hmm
importers that have been doing this for a long time, I apologize, but we like to kind of cover everything. So with those ACH payments, they are pulled out every time you make an entry. So you make an
hmm
entry, you declare what your duties are going to be, and then that payment is withdrawn. There's no submitting of the payment in that example. It's just an automatic
Right.
process.
hmm
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so then what happens if they're paying via periodic monthly statement or PM statement?
Yeah. So that can be a larger issue because those payments are so much bigger owed to customs.
Mhm.
Customs really takes that very seriously. And if they're not resolved pretty much right away, customs can turn off your PMS privileges.
Mhm.
They do say, I think, for a period of 90 days. I have seen situations where once the importer resolves the debit voucher situation, they'll reinstate their PMS privileges. But it can cause a pretty serious disruption in your supply chain if it's not resolved pretty immediately.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so for those PM
Mhm.
statements, is there I mean, is there a schedule of how those come out? Like, because you were saying every
Yeah.
entry comes out as soon as the entry is made. For
Mhm.
PM statements, when is it?
Yeah, Customs has a schedule published. They release it at the beginning of every year, that basically outlines, if your entries are made after this date, it'll come out on this statement date. And so you can find that online. They issue it through the CSMS
Mm.
website. So you can
Okay.
keep track of when your payments will be coming out and know exactly when that should be hitting your bank account.
Okay, so it's also pretty standard then. Every importer paying via PM statement, their payments
Hmm.
coming out on the same day.
Hmm. Hmm.
So then what, kind of going back to debit vouchers,
Hmm.
how, if you get this debit voucher or any debit voucher, regardless if it's from the situation or not, kind of
Hmm.
what are the steps to take care of a debit voucher?
Yeah. Yeah. So Customs takes these pretty seriously because they are, they can't access funds they believe they're owed.
Yeah.
So you have 15 days to resolve it. They will send you a notice, typically via the mail and any email addresses they have on file for you as the importer. And then typically the surety is also notified. It used to be you would have to pay these through wire transfer or cashier's check, some kind of certified payment method. Um, Late last year, Customs rolled out paying these via pay.gov, which has been really great. You can just go online to the bill payment site and submit it right there, which really helps resolve them a lot faster. So as soon as it's issued, as soon as you're aware of it, you can pay it online and avoid any potential interest accrual or, surety demands if it goes past due.
Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of making the problem worse and worse the
Hmm.
longer you wait.
Hmm. For sure.
I would imagine customs, yeah, takes these extremely seriously.
Hmm. Yes.
So has there been any other kind of effects that you've seen from this specific situation,
Hmm.
really?
Yeah. I have seen situations where, in addition to having your PMS privileges revoked, they have deactivated PUNS numbers. So the payer identification number that is specific to you. Um, they have it. I've seen it a few instances where they've deactivated that. So then, even when you're trying to make your normal ACH payments to customs, those continue to
Oh no.
to be dishonored
Yeah.
because you're technically no longer a valid payee.
Mhm.
So it becomes a much larger issue pretty quickly.
Can they? How hard is it to get that puns number reactivated?
Yeah. Yeah. So in addition to resolving the debit voucher, which happens with the debit voucher team at Customs, they have to work with the ACH team at Customs to
Mhm.
get their number reinstated.
All right. Yeah, I know that's a big thing that we at TRG talk about is
Hmm.
kind of reminding importers that, customs is a huge entity and all
Yeah.
of these little kind of offices within
Yeah.
customs, they
Highly
operate
compartmentalized.
very
Hmm.
separately from each other.
Yep.
So if you
Yeah.
have to work with, it's important to keep in mind because there are a lot of situations that we run into where the importer, has been thinking that they are resolving the issue because they're talking to one office, and then we kind of have to remind them, you have to talk to this other office as well, or
Hmm.
you're talking to the wrong office. You got to talk to
Yep.
these other people because
Yep.
those two offices don't talk to each other. um,
Exactly.
so
Hmm.
I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with these things is,
Hmm.
you gotta just remember customs is a big machine, and
Hmm.
you
Yep.
gotta work within their framework. Now we've talked a lot about what's going on. This can be a pretty big issue for
Hmm.
importers that encounter it. I know you have seen an influx of debit vouchers because of this.
Yep.
Um, Now, is there anything, or what would you suggest importers kind of do to avoid this situation altogether?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is paying attention to exactly what you're going to end up owing in duties, taxes, fees, and tariffs. Knowing when that's going to come out of your bank account. Also, making sure with your bank that you have established the proper withdrawal limits and,
Mhm.
make sure that, they aren't flagging these things as fraud. A lot of importers, a lot of banks use positive pay, which is basically just like fraud protection. So making sure you're paying attention to any notices that might be coming in to authorize those payments to come out. Um, really
Okay.
making sure that the financial institution is kind of set up to handle these withdrawals.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think too, another thing that you really should be doing, I mean, this should be kind of practice, especially if you're paying via PM statement, is really being aware of what you owe versus what
Hmm.
has already been paid.
Hmm.
Um, is there any easy way you know of to do that? Or is it just kind of, set up a protocol internally?
Yeah, certainly internal protocols. I know customs ACE accounts can be beneficial, but I also know pulling reports from there can be a little bit tricky sometimes.
Mhm.
Here at TRG, we are working on creating a report that does just that. It compares, what duties you have outstanding versus what's already been paid to kind of help you identify, know
Yeah.
exactly what's coming out and when it should come out. We don't have a release date yet for that, but it will be in our Eagle Eye Ace platform.
Yeah, yeah, that is definitely something we need to get out there, especially for
Hmm.
situations like this. I think a big takeaway for this situation is, we're talking right now about kind of a heightened um, moment that we're in,
Hmm.
right? With tariffs, and at the moment, tariffs are not fully going away. This higher amount of duties that importers are paying in general, whether it's IEPA or another way that tariffs are being imposed, the tariffs are there. So right now we are talking about this kind of heightened moment, but in general, even without the tariffs, this could still be an issue. If you have a dishonored payment to customs, it's going to result in a debit voucher. And a debit voucher, it is a type of claim on your bond, so your bond provider is going to know about it. Here at TRG, we're going to let you know. It's either going to be Rachel herself or one of her team members kind of reaching out to you to let you know. And I think it's important too to keep in mind that with these bills, even if if you might have not done anything wrong, right? It's like Rachel said kind of at the start of this, it might even just be that you changed your banking
Hmm.
information and you just didn't update it with customs. And that's an innocent mistake. It happens. Think of this bill as your chance to remedy that situation. You pay the bill, you take care of it, and then you kind of move forward and make sure it doesn't happen again. And with these tariffs too, it's kind of the same thing is, do what you can to hopefully have it not happen again.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so is there anything else you'd like to add kind of about this topic? I know this is just kind of like a hot topic in the moment that we've been seeing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's it. If you're one of TRG clients as your bond provider, we will help you work through this. We have the contact information for all of these departments at customs. We can help you get in touch with them to resolve the issue. We're going to help you work through it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for joining me today for the kind of this like quick talk. If anybody watching this, if you have any questions, I mean, if you're a TRG client or not, we love to hear your
Mhm.
questions. You can, always email us at askanexpert@tradersguarantee.com. You can even, this is going to be posted on YouTube. You can leave a comment on our YouTube video, however it is, and we'll try to answer as best we can. Of course, for very specific situations, we might not be able to give you a clear answer, but we're always going to try. But yeah, so again, thank you for joining me, Rachel, and thanks for tuning in, and everybody.
Thank you.